The Civil War is one of the most studied conflicts in American history. But how much do you really know about it? Beyond the famous battles and legendary figures, there are countless lesser-known stories, strange facts, and surprising connections to the American Old West that rarely make it into textbooks. From unexpected alliances to bizarre battlefield tactics, the war was far more complex and sometimes more shocking than you might think. So saddle up and get ready to uncover 9 things you were never taught about the Civil War.
Soldiers from all over. The Union Army during the Civil War was a striking example of diversity, with soldiers coming from a wide array of backgrounds. Immigrants made up about 1/3 of the total fighting force, and African Americans, both freed slaves and free men, accounted for nearly 1 in 10. This composition formed an early multicultural and multinational military force, highlighting the inclusive nature of the Union's ranks. Among the immigrant soldiers, the Irish were the most prominent, constituting nearly 8% of the army. Their involvement was marked by the formation of distinct Irish regiments that fought bravely in numerous battles. But the Irish were not the only immigrants to join the cause. Germans, who made up almost 10% of the total Union soldiers, were particularly organized into regiments such as the Steuben Volunteers, named after the Prussian officer Baron von Steuben, who had helped train Washington's army in the American Revolution. Other immigrants hailed from countries like France, Italy, Poland, England, Scotland, and Wales, contributing further to the melting pot of the Union Army. The presence of immigrants in the Union Army was not merely a matter of numbers, but also had a significant operational impact. Roughly 25% of Union battalions nationwide were predominantly made up of immigrant soldiers. These soldiers brought with them diverse skills, experiences, and perspectives, adding a unique strength to the Union's military might. Their involvement also signified how the war attracted a wide array of people who were motivated by the promise of new opportunities in the fight for freedom. Additionally, the inclusion of African American soldiers in 1863 was another key turning point. After the Emancipation Proclamation, Black men were allowed to enlist in the Union Army, and they quickly became an integral part of the war effort. Their involvement marked a critical shift in the war's dynamics. Some historians argue that the influx of African American soldiers in the final years of the war was a pivotal factor in the Union's success, providing much-needed manpower that bolstered the Army's effectiveness and morale. When examining the makeup of the Union Army, it's important to recognize that the traditional image of Northern white soldiers fighting for emancipation only tells part of the story. In reality, the Union Army was a vast coalition of people from many backgrounds: immigrants, freed slaves, and other African Americans, all united in their fight for the preservation of the Union and the end of slavery. This diverse force played an essential role in securing victory and shaping the future of the United States. The varied backgrounds of the soldiers in the Union Army were a testament to the broad appeal of the fight for liberty and justice, and their contributions were crucial to the war's outcome. Tubman's Raid. Harriet Tubman is best known for escaping slavery and guiding others to freedom through the Underground Railroad. However, during the Civil War, she took on another vital role. In 1862, she arrived at a Union camp in Port Royal, South Carolina, determined to aid the Northern cause. She initially focused on helping formerly enslaved women develop skills to find work with the Union Army. Before long, she took on a more active role, gathering intelligence from freed Black individuals and conducting reconnaissance missions along the river. Her contributions reached a new level in 1863 when she became directly involved in a military operation. On June 1st, Tubman collaborated with Union Colonel James Montgomery to carry out a bold mission at Combahee Ferry. Alongside 300 Black Union soldiers, she helped lead an expedition deep into Confederate-held territory. As Union gunboats signaled with loud whistles, troops advanced through nearby plantations, setting fire to structures and assisting enslaved individuals in their escape. Years later, Tubman reflected on how the sight of families fleeing toward freedom reminded her of the biblical story of the Israelites leaving Egypt. The mission was extraordinary. More than 720 enslaved people were freed that day. Beyond its immediate impact, the Combahee Ferry raid was historically significant for another reason. Tubman became the first woman to lead a military operation of this scale during the war. The mission's success further cemented her remarkable legacy and demonstrated the vital role she played in the Union war effort. No pay, no fight. During the Civil War, black soldiers in the Union Army took a firm stand against wage discrimination. While white soldiers received a minimum of $13 per month, black soldiers were paid only $10. On top of that, they were charged a $3 monthly deduction for uniforms, effectively reducing their earnings to just $7. This meant that even the highest paid black soldier made only half of what the lowest paid white soldier received. For men serving their country and risking everything on the battlefield, this inequity was unacceptable. Frustrated by the unfair treatment, many black regiments protested by refusing to accept their reduced wages. Some even threatened to stop fighting unless they received equal pay. Their courage in combat, combined with growing support from abolitionist leaders in Congress, put pressure on lawmakers to address the issue. In the fall of 1864, Congress finally granted black soldiers the same wages as their white counterparts. Additionally, they received back pay, retroactive to their enlistment date. This long overdue change not only brought a sense of justice, but also allowed many soldiers to send financial support to their families for the first time. More importantly for the Union, it helped retain vital troops in the fight against the Confederacy at a critical point in the war. Lincoln's plans for freed slaves. Before and during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln supported the idea of resettling freed black Americans outside the United States. This concept, known as colonization, was widely discussed in the 19th century and had the backing of notable figures such as Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, and even Harriet Beecher Stowe. In her novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, Stowe depicted formerly enslaved characters choosing to move to Africa, reflecting a common belief of the time. In August 1862, Lincoln invited a group of black ministers and anti-slavery advocates to the White House to discuss the issue. During their meeting, he suggested that slavery and the ongoing war had created deep divisions and that it might be in everyone's best interest to consider relocation. He proposed Central America as a possible destination and even advocated for a constitutional amendment that would allow Congress to fund voluntary resettlement efforts. However, Lincoln's colonization proposal faced strong opposition. Abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison rejected the idea, arguing that black Americans had every right to remain in the country of their birth. Many politicians in Washington were also unwilling to support such a plan. Ultimately, after Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, he no longer promoted colonization publicly, shifting his focus to the integration of freed people into American society. Lee's esteemed estate. During the Civil War, the Union took control of Robert E. Lee's Virginia estate, Arlington. Before the conflict erupted, Lee and his wife, Mary, had left their 1,100-acre property, which overlooked Washington, D.C. Its strategic location made it valuable to the Union, and by 1863, the U.S. government officially seized it. The stated reason was unpaid taxes totaling $92.07. With control of the estate, the Union soon repurposed it in a profound way. President Abraham Lincoln approved its use as a cemetery for fallen Union soldiers. A burial site was established in what had once been the estate's rose garden. The decision was not just practical but symbolic, meant to ensure that if Lee ever returned, he would be met with a visible reminder of the war's human cost. After the conflict ended, the Lee family briefly considered reclaiming Arlington. However, they ultimately chose not to return. In 1877, their eldest son, George Washington Custis Lee, challenged the government's seizure in court. He argued that the property had been taken unlawfully, and in 1882, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in his favor, returning the estate to him. Despite regaining ownership, George Lee faced a difficult reality. The land had already become a burial ground for thousands of soldiers. Rather than displace the graves, he made the decision to sell the property back to the federal government for $150,000. Over time, Arlington expanded into what is now Arlington National Cemetery, the final resting place for approximately 250,000 service members. Abe's almost assassination. Several years before his tragic assassination, Abraham Lincoln had a close brush with danger that remained largely unknown. This was by his own choice. He preferred to keep the incident private rather than alarm those around him. During the summer of 1864, after a long day at the White House, Lincoln set out alone for the soldiers' home, a retreat where he and his family often stayed to escape the pressures of Washington. As he neared the entrance, a sudden gunshot pierced the quiet night. Startled, his horse bolted, racing toward the compound with Lincoln clinging to its back, his hat missing. Later, when attendants searched for his lost hat, they discovered something startling, a bullet hole through the fabric. Lincoln later recounted that the shot had been fired from a hill nearby, causing his horse to panic. Recognizing the seriousness of the event, he instructed his guards to keep it a secret. His main concern was sparing his wife, Mary, any unnecessary worry. The incident remains one of history's fascinating what-ifs. Had the bullet struck just a few inches lower, history could have taken a very different turn months before John Wilkes Booth carried out his fatal attack. Tecumseh's terrible tirades. William Tecumseh Sherman is widely remembered as one of the most influential Union generals of the Civil War. However, early in his military career, he faced significant setbacks, including doubts about his mental stability that nearly ended his command. In October 1861, while leading Union forces in Kentucky, Sherman assessed the challenges ahead and requested 60,000 troops for defense and an additional 200,000 for an offensive strategy. His request was met with skepticism. U.S. Secretary of War Simon Cameron considered his estimates unrealistic and removed him from command. This decision deeply affected Sherman, who expressed feelings of despair in a letter to his brother. Despite his doubts, he chose to move forward for the sake of his family. By February 1862, Sherman was reassigned to Paducah, Kentucky, where he served under Ulysses S. Grant. Unlike others, Grant recognized Sherman's abilities and supported his strategic vision. Their partnership would go on to shape the course of the war, proving instrumental in key Union victories. As the war continued, the bond between the two generals grew stronger. On one occasion, when a civilian criticized Grant's leadership, Sherman responded firmly. "General Grant is a great general," he stated. "He stood by me when I was thought to be unstable, and I stood by him when others doubted him. Now, sir, we stand by each other always." Their mutual respect and loyalty played a crucial role in their success, reinforcing the importance of trust in leadership during challenging times. General gloom and doom. During the Civil War, the highest-ranking officers often faced greater personal danger than the soldiers they commanded. Unlike in modern warfare, generals frequently led their troops from the front lines, placing themselves at significant risk. Their direct involvement made them approximately 50% more likely to lose their lives in combat compared to enlisted soldiers. One well-known instance occurred in May 1864, when Confederate General Robert E. Lee attempted to lead a counterattack during the Battle of the Wilderness. His troops, however, intervened, urging him to remain behind. They feared that if he charged into battle, he would become a primary target, potentially boosting Union morale if anything happened to him. Had he been a lower-ranking officer, his decision to fight alongside his men might not have caused such alarm. Yet this kind of hands-on leadership was common among generals of the era. Over time, military strategy evolved, and in later conflicts, high-ranking officers took on more strategic roles, directing troop movements from a safer distance. Some battles proved particularly costly for military leaders. The Battle of Antietam alone resulted in 3 generals losing their lives and 6 others suffering serious injuries. Another notable case was that of Confederate General James Longstreet, who was accidentally wounded by one of his own men during the Battle of the Wilderness. Despite his injuries, he recovered and continued to serve, ultimately living for 4 more decades beyond the war, outlasting many of his fellow officers and soldiers. While the Civil War was perilous for all who fought, those in command faced an even greater burden. The responsibility of leading armies came with extraordinary risk, often requiring them to stand in harm's way alongside their troops. Disease took most. The Civil War remains the deadliest conflict in American history, but most soldiers did not perish in battle. Instead, disease proved to be the greatest threat. Illnesses spread rapidly through crowded military camps, far surpassing combat as the leading cause of death. Over 4 years, more than 600,000 men lost their lives. This number exceeds the combined fatalities of World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. To put it in perspective, if the names of the fallen were inscribed on a memorial similar to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, it would stretch more than 10 times its length. The war's toll amounted to approximately 2% of the U.S. population at the time, a loss that would equate to over 6 million people today. While firearms played a significant role in the conflict, widespread illness had a far greater impact. Many soldiers came from rural communities where they had little exposure to contagious diseases. Once they joined the Army, they lived in close quarters, often in overcrowded tents with poor ventilation. This created the perfect conditions for infections to spread. Common childhood illnesses such as measles, mumps, and chickenpox circulated quickly among troops. Malaria alone affected nearly 1 million Union soldiers. Sanitation was poor, medical knowledge was limited, and epidemics became a persistent and deadly reality in both Union and Confederate camps. The war's medical challenges highlight how, beyond the battlefield, survival often depended on luck, environment, and access to care.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.